They're not, but they have to meet for soul with everything.
So I had to Oh no, I don't. But she told me that she's really great. Is this everybody? We'll have
Are you supposed to have fun? Oh, great. Oh, fine.
That was the very first show. I produced that one as well. And that's before anybody knew who she was. I saw her in the movie. I saw her in the movie. I absolutely love what she got. She really wasn't a
You're actually
no video. Carol's taking a video. No video. Not like the sunny usually from the gym. I don't know.
I know Hannah. No, you're good.
Yeah.
I want to play. And then I remember.
Sammy's performing.
But I don't have to share. We'll just like wait.
Literally balance.
All right, welcome to URCAD, Undergraduate Research and Achievement Day. This is a campus-wide event that shows and displays the achievements of undergraduates. We have 4 choreographers to present to you. They're going to present their pieces, and then we're going to do a little Q&A afterwards, so have your questions ready. The exit sign is that way, no flash photography, no video.
Turn off your phone.
Turn your phones off, put your phones on silent. So we have 4 choreographers to present, and the first one is Stephen Dan. He's going to show his capstone performance called Broken Strings. Carol.
I have a question. So you traveled to LA
Yes.
to study West Coast hip hop
Mm-hmm.
because you wanted to compare the different the styles from different parts of the country, from East Coast to West Coast. So
Right.
what did you learn there, and what did you apply from that to making this dance?
So one of like the bigger things I noticed learning choreography from all the different teachers there is that they put a lot more emphasis on like the different grooves and the more nuanced movement in between like the pictures that you don't necessarily always get from classes here, because I feel like the choreographers in this area that try to do hip hop mostly learn from videos that they see from West Coast choreographers, so they may miss some of the details, and a lot of the time I kind of feel like East Coast choreographers kind of mimic what they see online, so you kind of miss those things. So when I was there, I picked up those things. I got better at like grooves, and like I got better at like making my own. So I kind of just like that. I guess those lessons and those like learnings just like embodied more of my movement like as I grew from that experience.
For a non-choreographer, can you demonstrate what you mean by a groove?
It's like any groove, like you see, like you do a two-step, you do like millies, those are all grooves, but like a lot of choreographers, they'll like kind of make up their own or different, like just simple movements. They'll have a bigger like torso movement in their upper torso, so like instead of like going here, you can do or just like something bigger that they'll like emphasize more.
I saw a lot of detail in the head and the hands, so can you talk about that a little bit too?
I think that's more just like personal style. That's also just like different influences I get. That's like a thing that's kind of come up from like West Coast as well. They'll have like more intricate things with hands and gestural things of that nature. So that's just something like I kind of picked up and like kind of like use in my own way. Yeah.
Brandon has a question.
Having had you as a student for contemporary dance, I noticed a lot of ballet steps, ballonets, brises, jetés. And knowing you primarily as a hip hop dancer, what made you include that in your choreography?
So for me, since it was like my last piece in the department, I kind of wanted to dig into like a lot of the classes that I took here. So I didn't want to just like throw out all the ballet classes, all the modern classes I took here, and I wanted to like use that and learn how to choreograph in those styles and also be able to incorporate it into how I dance normally. So I just wanted to like, solidify everything I've learned throughout the years here.
And able to direct your dancers.
Yeah.
It's like multi-genre style. How did you pick your dancers?
Um,
For the senior capstone, they create their own audition and choose their own dancers.
Yeah, so I think Hannah, one of my dancers, like I worked with her before, so I kind of know how she moves, but I think the other dancers, before I would look for someone who can perform and someone who like gives a lot of like emotion and everything like that, and I think my dancers can do that as well, but I think during this audition I looked more for technique, but also like how they move. So personally, like this might be like a shot or whatever, but I feel like sometimes technical dancers, they can be somewhat stiff in like other styles. So when I auditioned them, I kind of looked for people who were able to like flow through each movement that I gave them.
Can I ask, so I don't know very much about the process of putting together something like this.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how much do you work with the dancers to come up with the moves that are being done versus like you come in the first day and you have everything like on a sheet of paper? Because there's so many sections where all four people are doing such dramatically different things. Like it would be so hard to have all that already in your head when the moves are within the same sort of universe but look so different.
So I can't speak for like every choreographer and like everyone's process, but for me, I know this probably annoyed my dancers, but like I come into rehearsal and I kind of make stuff there, because I kind of like the pressure of like having someone there and like needing to like solidify movement and not like really being able to question it. So I do that. So a lot of times, mostly everything I make, but it's not something like I wrote down or anything like that. I just make it roughly on the spot and like tweak it here and there. There was some collaborative effort. I'll kind of give them like a prompt or like something to like an idea or a theme to help them figure out how they want to move, and like I can just kind of tweak how they're moving. But most of the time, it's me making the movement and like kind of setting it on them. Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Zach.
Hello. So you noticed that there's a little bit of difference between the West Coast and the East Coast, and you said there's like these subtle like details that are being missed by the East Coast hip hop scene. So like after coming back from that, how are you making sure that your choreography here, if you want to include those details in your dance, like you're still incorporating that, but you're now not in that environment where it's all around you?
Interesting. I think it's not like I need to be surrounded by the environment. I do get what you're saying, because I felt like after I came back and there was a little bit of like downtime and like coming back to like home and everything like that, and like the community here, I did feel like there were some things lost in my movement and some things lost like just like choreographically. But I think the overall like the things I learned are still there, so they're gonna come out regardless of like whether I try to or like I think about it too much. So I try not to think about it too much, because that kind of like leads me to question a lot of things that I'm doing. So I don't really want to like do that. It gets like very annoying. But yeah, I think once you learn those things and like if you physically think about it, you can like put it into practice. But I think most of the time as a dancer, and if you continue dancing, those lessons are going to be in your body no matter what.
It's like learning a foreign language and
Yeah.
trying to keep it up.
Yeah.
It's interesting the techniques that develop in our body and we continue over time. I thought you said you were thinking about traveling or moving to LA after graduation.
Yeah, that was hopefully the plan. After, I always say like no later than like a year after I graduate, I wanted to move out, just because I feel like if you wait too long, it gets like less applicable. Like a lot of things come up and like you kind of like you like shoot it for later, and like, oh, I'm gonna do it later, I'm gonna do it next year and do it next month. So like I set that like time limit for me, but I definitely want to move out because I feel like that's where a lot more opportunities are, just like for me, what I want to do.
To continue your collaborations.
Yeah.
Cross-genre choreography.
Any other questions? So.
How did you choose like the music? I saw like a lot of, or I heard a lot of like not hard hitting, like what I would expect for hip hop, but like it had like, I don't know, a mixture of music in there, so I don't know.
Yeah, not gonna lie, the idea was kind of like taken from another team, like I'm on, Major Definition, which is like the hip hop team on campus. Hey, what's up? Plug. But one of the set that we had recently, they wanted to do like a violin medley, and like most of the music was violin, and I thought that was like a pretty good idea for me, just because like violin, you think more classical like things, and I knew I wanted to mix the two, so I tried to find violin. I originally tried to find violin covers of like songs I would usually choreograph to, but then there was a whole thing of like music rights and everything like that, so I had to find new things. But the concept of like a violin mixed with like a hip hop or like not contemporary, but like more of hip hop or just like a trap beat was still there, just to kind of like have the idea of like mixing worlds. Yeah.
So you mixed it on your own?
Oh no. Oh, okay, so I found them like on YouTube. Like, so that's what I searched for. I searched for like violin hip hop or like violin trap instrumentals, and like these are two songs I found on YouTube. Yeah. There's a question.
Yeah, it seems like I have limited experience with dance, but it seems like East Coast dancers can try to incorporate West Coast styles into it. When you were on the West Coast, did you see the opposite happening, or did you feel like hip hop, it's harder to bring in the East Coast style?
So there are a couple things, because a lot of choreographers in LA. Well, okay, so one of the things I found out going to LA, like no one in LA is like from LA. Like most of the people, like literally, like I went there, like I thought it was gonna be cool, like New Kid on the Block. No, everyone is just like from like everywhere, Spain, like Australia, like New Zealand, like East Coast, up north, like no one there is from like there. So there's gonna be a lot of influences, but so like I know one of the teachers there that I learned from, they were from New York, so they had like a different style than like everyone else. So there are, I think, hotspots on the East Coast. Like New York has like their own kind of way to move, and like Atlanta is kind of there. But I think DMV is still. I've had these discussions with like people in the community, and especially in the hip hop scene, it like fluctuates. So we've had like spikes in like the community's like very there, and like people are growing. But I think a lot of people either leave the area or they stop dancing. So it's hard for the community to like get its own genuine style. So I think for the DMV that's kind of lost, but there are times when like East Coast influences are like shown in the West Coast and like vice versa.
Good. Thank
Great.
you so much, Stephen. So our next choreographer is also performing in her own piece as a soloist. Her name is Nika Reeves. Well, I have a personal story with Nika. She started in my composition class, and we would meet on Fridays to just work on a piece for no reason, no performance coming up. She was working very diligently on a solo that she was doing called Bulletproof, which then she took to the Baltimore Theater Project to a performance called Open Marley Night and performed it there. And they liked it so much that they decided to present an entire evening-length work. So an undergraduate with an evening-length work at Baltimore Theater Project that she just performed this past weekend. So this is an excerpt from that work, Together We Stand. noticing how she's embodying gender, she started embodying race. I'm curious about her projections, multimedia. Can you tell us where you started in this piece? What inspired this piece?
I usually, sorry.
Now that you're out of breath.
Okay. So since I turned 25, I've kind of taken like a different perspective on life. So I constantly am observing what's going on around me and current situations and everything. So I was comparing myself when I was a child to how I am now. So the black stuff that was going on in the projection represented all the things I've been through to kind of change me as an individual. And then me right now is kind of representing my innocence before I transitioned to the stuff that happened to me throughout time and through my life. So a lot of this came from just everyday situations and observing what's going around me, and I just started building from there.
Questions? Yes.
What did watching yourself play back in video teach you about dance, about your movement?
It taught me that I like to move very slow and legato. So I think ultimately to me now, I'm constantly from this point on out trying to challenge myself and make myself move faster and more dynamically, because I like to just kind of like linger around and be like, But I've been researching and reading different books about what dance is and how to embody certain topics and connecting to your spirit. So constantly now, like whenever I'm performing, I'm constantly thinking of how I can project more, move around more and everything. And just be honest to the movement and what I'm feeling at that moment in time.
So in performing this solo, it seems very clear to me that you are going through a process while you're performing this. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Throughout my life, I typically work very hard. Sometimes I try to slack, but it just doesn't work that way. For me, no. Wherever I go, typically I always have to work the hardest. So I bring that into my movement as well. I start building and really trying to work through and push myself harder and harder and keep working harder till I actually can sweat. Because when I sweat, then I know I'm like, actually giving out something. So yeah, I would definitely say hard work is like the main drive of a piece of any piece that I'm in, of how I build and start working harder and harder until I tire myself out. And then it can be more, the movement's more authentic because I'm actually tired or actually felt in a certain way. So.
I don't even know how to ask this, but I have two questions I think that follow up from Carol Hess. One is, as choreographer and performer, you have a great opportunity to respond to the spirit of the moment. Did you improvise at all, or did you really stick to the script? Would be one question.
For me, in this piece particularly, I kind of did an outline, shot in the beginning, and created an end, and had a couple of ideas of how I wanted the middle to be. But basically, I was going through at the same time and thinking about certain words should generate movement. I was reading this one article where a choreographer had his students write down "I am," and then from there on, you just wrote down words. I can be weak at times. I'm not scared. I'm not. So I just draw from there. So that's usually typically how I move throughout the space. Like I can be vulnerable, or I can be close in. So yeah, basically a lot of trigger words which generated choreography at that time.
And if I may, I also felt that you did as well.
Actually, yeah, I was in the studio and I couldn't get anything, like I really couldn't, and I was just in like sweatpants and a t-shirt, and I was just like, well, maybe I put the dress on, it'll help me a little bit more to like generate something. So I did a rollover and the skirt stayed up in my face, and I looked at him and I was like, it's actually kind of cool. So from there on, I just like started exploring how that would look, like how far could I keep it on my face until it would fall off organically and I would have to address my face. So, yeah.
And your hair too, you used as a prop.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a mask, or a veil, like you said.
I wanted to like comment on the hair and because I mean hair is such an important part of like the Black community.
Yeah.
So like it was that part of like the maybe racial tensions or whatever. Was that part of it?
It wasn't. Organically, it was kind of like just covering my face, but it is a good, interesting point though. I didn't consider that.
Oh, also, like, what do you do for your arms?
Here's the thing. I'm actually a cheater. My dad, I don't know how this happened. In his gene, a lot of the females just kind of like have it. So even when I was like 10, I had the arms. But then my gym teacher, he was like, you know, you got some real strong arms. You need to work those out. So I started doing push-ups, boxing, pull-ups, and then actually had like, so it's general. It's like actually like strong. This is like, I actually work these out. But at first it was kind of like just like a posing thing.
I have a question about your video. Does somebody make it for you, or do you do it yourself? Do you come up with the concept?
Yeah, the last piece I had created, someone had did it for me, but this one I had did it myself. I kind of went into the studio one day and it was like a rainy day, and I was just feeling down, and I had like, I put some supplies in front of me. I had a camera, I had paint, and I had a back dress. What can you do with that? So I just started discovering options. I started putting paint on me and seeing how I reacted to how I looked differently with the paint and everything. And then I had certain sections will outline the choreography. And then from there, I just turned on the camera, did a certain section with the paint, and then turned it off. Basically, I just recorded bits and clips of it, and then after that, just put it all together.
So you're making this comparison between yourself now and yourself then.
Yeah.
And through this creative process, did you notice any like lessons that you didn't notice before that like really stood out to you as this is important to me now?
Yeah. I noticed that I feel like in the past I kind of had just been like there, usually just going through time, not really having like any kind of anything. I was almost like kind of like a depressed state maybe or something. So I compared my movement there to how I'm now. I feel like now I'm more empowered and more like fire, like get out there and just like. So I did learn a lesson from there. I learned I'm much more stronger than I think I am. So yeah.
So I know that this is just an excerpt from an evening-length piece where you do have other dancers in it.
Yeah.
What was the process for that putting the whole thing together, rather than just, okay, I have these words and I'm going to kind of structured improv myself? What did you do with the other dancers?
So I had 3 beautiful dancers. There's Jubilee on stage, the audience. So the process for that was I would have outlines of my choreography, and I know my dancers have organic and like different types of way that they move that I really appreciated myself that I didn't have. So what I would do is I would give him a section of my choreography and then give him like a theme or an idea and tell them to go in the corners or separate corners and think of what it generates movement for them. And then I would see how their movement looked compared to mine and then put it together as a whole. And then just basically work on the transitions of how it moves through. And that's pretty much how we work throughout the whole entire thing. Yeah.
When you stood up, you were on releve a lot. Was that a particular thing you were projecting to us? Or?
Yeah, it was kind of like, in the beginning, it was kind of like I'm reaching for something, but then like as it progresses on, it's kind of like an energy is like surging through. So I'm kind of like getting stronger. When at first I was kind of like vulnerable, in a vulnerable state. So yeah.
Good. Anything else? Beautiful work. Thank you so much. A senior in the dance department. This is an excerpt from a longer work called Luminous from her capstone performance. Vasconcells, who also danced in her own work.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this idea of luminous, about working with light and collaborating with the elements of the lighting design, and also your incredible prop as light.
So I was curious how
people could emit light from themselves to show that we all have this light inside of us. So it's not just the lighting reflecting on the dancer like a normal kind of dance piece, but also in collaboration with Brian, the lighting designer, we worked with how to show light from ourselves and also have it radiate into us and show it through dance movement the best we could.
How did you come up with your idea with your dress and LED lights? How does that even work? Did someone? Can you show us?
No, it's like a little thing.
What is that? Like a battery?
Yeah.
And then did you have a costume designer sew it in?
Nope, I did it.
You did it yourself?
Yeah. It was just like a string sewn into it. I just wanted it to be kind of a muted light, so it wasn't just like a harsh, like just like lights on the costume. So finding a skirt that had like the right opacity to show through was what I wanted, and they had them in stock, so that was good.
That's always a plus.
Yeah.
I have a question about your process.
Mm.
When you make a piece, do you create a phrase and then make canons and theme and variations out of that? Do you collaborate with the dancers?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of that. So I normally start making a phrase of movement. It can be maybe around a minute, and then I experiment with different types of music to see what kind of qualities I can get out of it. If it's more hard hitting, if it's more light and airy, that kind of thing. It also worked well with my theme because the light and airy movements was more related to light, and then the heavier movements was darkness and grounded kind of thing. And then from there, I was really interested in working with my dancers and their own styles and their own techniques and what was unique to each of them. So that's where I kind of asked for their collaboration. Yeah.
So you did not originally perform in this piece.
No, I did not. My dancer, Casey Mannion, unfortunately broke her foot, and she's not able to dance yet, so I had to learn it really quickly.
So what was that like to now have to learn your choreography, because you were sitting outside and kind of directing and seeing the whole thing? What was it like to now have to learn someone's part and insert yourself amidst all of that?
It was definitely interesting because watching it as many times as I did was kind of like in my mind, like I was taken out of it. Like I made it, but then they made the artistry more pronounced and that kind of thing. So learning it, I also made specific things for Casey because she has great legs, great feet, that kind of thing, and she's a great dancer. But some of the stuff I had to change because I like the other leg, and and there was also 2 sections of this dance that were not performed because one was a duet with Casey and Maya, and then the other was a trio. And I felt that I couldn't learn it that quickly because it was like 2 weeks. I also didn't want to make all of my dancers come in for that much rehearsal, just for myself to learn it. So I basically learned it through watching the videos that I had from rehearsal. It was really interesting to put myself into it and learn the choreography that way instead of learning from an outside choreographer. Because it is my movement, so I'm used to most of it, but some of the qualities definitely were different than what I would normally do.
So there seemed to be, I don't know how to phrase it. So there seemed to be sort of metaphors in this piece where there would be movement that was representative of something sort of. So my question is, how do you think about crafting a movement so that on the one hand it evokes something else, but on the other hand it's not just like mimicry. Like it's not like, you know, I'm gonna act like whatever, a hermit crab or something like that. Where is that middle ground? I don't know anything about dance. How do you find that? What are you doing?
Yeah, definitely a good question. I think for this piece specifically, I was interested in just a lot of level changes, that kind of thing, not to show like, okay, this is light, like this is dark. Like I wanted to show just kind of like the around, like you're saying, not to mimic it, but to go around it. And I think that with a lot of dances, sometimes we all struggle with trying not to make it just mimicry. So it is finding that common ground where it's like, okay, this phrase shows how I'm being more grounded and more related to the darkness, but it's not like depressing. We're not just kind of like standing there like sad, that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of where it comes from. I don't know if I answered your question. Kind of.
Yeah, dance is such an interplay of light and music and emotion. Where did you start when you were making the piece? Was there like an image or a painting, or did you start with the music and imagining what you want to do with it?
I was kind of inspired by Light City. I don't know if you guys have been to Light City in Baltimore. Just kind of like how the light just came alive like at nighttime. And I was like, how can we do this like through like people and not just like things we look at, like things that are moving, that kind of thing. So then from there I was like, oh, well, I can make a dance about that. And so then I started looking like online, like how can you put lights in costumes so it's not just like dots all over. So yeah, that's kind of how my idea started.
So the literal aspect of light and dark and also the emotional aspect of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Since light was such a large aspect, obviously, of your whole dance, how early did you bring in the technical side? Like, did you create the whole choreography and then match the lighting to that, or was it sort of all together, building?
So the whole skirt lighting was kind of like halfway through, so then I could see like what kind of movements they could do that made it like move correctly. It wasn't just kind of like still. And I wanted to make sure the skirts could like move enough so you can like move your legs. But with Brian, we, I think, collaborated maybe a month and a half before the show. I think, maybe I'm wrong. But he had seen the pieces previously of what we had, maybe 2 months in, I think. And from there, I assume that's where his magic happens. And he thinks of ideas that would be good for our piece, and then we say, yes, that's great. And then, especially for this dance, I wanted it to be kind of darker so that you could see the lights, but also not where you couldn't see the dancers at all. So I think that's what really helped with having him be able to do that for us.
Yeah, that first lighting cue when you guys were walking up stage. Beautiful, like shimmering from a swimming pool, like that was beautiful. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Megan Mellon. She received an undergraduate research award to attend Bates Dance Festival over the summer, where she learned from a lot of different dancers and choreographers and movement therapists. We're going to talk about it later. It's called Being Body, and she's embodying different ideas of physiology, movement. Tell us what Bates is. I told everybody you went to Bates over.
Oh, sure. So Bates is a wonderful dance festival that's held up in Maine. And they bring in different art collaborators, choreographers, teachers from all different types of backgrounds into this whole festival. So the students go and we take classes all throughout the days, and then they offer different classes at night that you can choose to attend. So you really get like this whole versatile and really diverse dance experience to add to your training.
Sounds like a lot of the things that you learned inspired this piece.
Absolutely.
Tell us about some of them.
Sure. So with this piece, I wanted to combine my passions for dance and biology, and going to Bates like really just like kind of built the impetus for this piece. I took a class that talked about kind of body alignment and how we have this structure and how to use that structure through our dancing. So that was one of kind of the primary sources of information for me. But then I learned about release technique and just different ways of moving and exploring different types of motion that I hadn't personally done yet. So to kind of explore those a little bit more and step outside my comfort zone to build that.
When you came across an idea during the Bates Dance Festival that you knew you wanted to incorporate later, is there a way that you held on to that you like found useful?
That was a great question. Yes, I kept a very detailed journal throughout my whole time at Bates. So after every class, I was writing down notes and different ideas, and I was like, this will work, like mark a star next to that one. So then I was able to use that when I was then building the piece in the fall to go back and find inspiration or return to an idea or kind of modify something that I had learned. But yeah, it gave me like this huge source of kind of things to pick and choose from.
So I noticed some very different qualities in the sections, and I wanted to ask you particularly about this section where everything seemed very organized. And then after that, it seemed more wafty and kind of loose and snaky. So can you talk about those?
Sure. Yes, so there were essentially 3 sections to this dance. So the first one dealt with the principle of evolution and, kind of finding this current body structure that we are in as humans. And then I wanted to isolate kind of like one body part at a time, or, look at muscles, then maybe like asymmetry and symmetry in the bones. So to really look at distinct ideas and individual parts at a time. And then to end the piece was with the idea of like, now we've kind of explored this whole structure, what can we do, like moving everything all at once.
I saw a lot of evolution and de-evolution too, with the spinal, tracking the spine up.
So I wanted to ask you about character development, because you had these 5 sort of characters that all seem very different despite us, and I think a lot of the time when there's like group choreography, it's everybody sort of doing different variations on the same thing, and it seemed like there were these very distinct characters. So I guess how did you develop that, or what was the process of coming up with those characters, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I think that process happened a little bit spontaneous initially, and kind of from that beginning section I was like, okay, what parts are changing as this structure evolved, and from there I kind of isolated different pieces, and then it ended up just kind of continuing throughout the piece, and I think my dancers were able to find a sense of identity, and that helped them determine what qualities that they were going to use throughout the piece. So yeah, I think it was a little bit of just spontaneity, but I think it worked well in the piece of kind of this idea of starting as kind of like a water cell, everything is the same, but then as we grow, everyone has a different structure and everyone is a different person and bodies can do different things. So to kind of work with the contrast between those two ideas.
That's interesting in thinking about movement modalities, how we initiate differently, and dancers dance with different intentions.
My question sort of piggybacks. So at what point was 5 the right number? Because it certainly seemed the right number of dancers.
Mm-hmm.
Was that from the start, or?
From the start, I had originally cast 6 in my piece, and the one dancer just was in too many other pieces. But I think it did work out having an odd number, in that you kind of avoid the symmetry of having 6 dancers, and especially in a piece where everything's kind of ever changing. I didn't necessarily need clear-cut structure and alignment, so I think it did work well for me.
If I understood, Erica, you won an URA, an undergraduate research award, which means you had to write a proposal and have some idea in advance of what you wanted to learn and what you wanted to bring back. Could you just talk about that process a little bit, and any advice for others about seeking these funds to do something so great?
Absolutely. That's a good question. I truly cannot say enough good things about the URA Scholars Program. That is the reason why I was able to go and do this, so I'm incredibly grateful for it. But I did have this idea as a dance and biology major. My whole 4 years here at UMBC, people have been like, well, that's an interesting combination of majors. So it was kind of, I used that as my way to combine the two. And going in, when I was applying, Bates has several different classes that you can choose from. I think close to 40 that I could have arranged for my scheduling. So I tried to pick those classes that related to anatomy a bit more, or movement versatility, or doing something that I hadn't yet learned, to tie in that kind of scientific component to it. But yeah, and then while I was there, it was kind of narrowing the focus of I am learning a ton, and I think I was able to use a bunch from it, but recognizing what was really important and valuable for finding these anatomical and physiological components.
Did you know that that's what you wanted to focus on before you went, in terms of movement modalities and somatic practices?
Yeah,
or did you just go and let yourself be open?
I had a general idea of, this is what I wanted to do for my senior dance piece, but I think I was really open when I went to let me learn as much as I possibly can, because I think you can find value in anything that you learn through your dance training. So it was kind of sticking with the overall idea, but then allowing myself to find those little extra pieces that I maybe wasn't expecting to find.
Well, what you're talking about really is what happens when we do research, because if you had the whole thing figured out in your mind before you went, you wouldn't have had to go.
Yeah.
So part of it was to have kind of an idea what you wanted to do, but then allowing these influences to, and exploring these influences to really come up with something that might have surprised you in many ways. That had the essence of what you wanted to do, but wasn't exactly the vision you walked in with. So I think that's kind of the wonderful thing about, for dancers to go and participate in these workshops, and to get so many influences that will help inform your choices. You probably didn't do everything that you learned at Bates, but you found strands in there that led you somewhere new.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool.
What would you do if you had to continue this piece?
Oh, that's
or
a great question.
Evening length work, what would you do?
I think part of me, because I did learn so much, and there was so much that I was interested in, and to try to condense all of that into 10 minutes, I did find, I was like, wow, you know, I just want to include everything. So I think if I were to continue really kind of focusing on like one idea and really developing that and finding the details and arrangement of that before I proceeded to the next idea, and that would be a way to turn it into, you know, an hour-long piece.
Yeah, each section could be a body section. Cool.
Nice.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Megan.